60 Minutes Overtime.
Ashley, you produced an important story for 60 Minutes this week about the weapon of choice for most mass shooters, the AR-15 semi-automatic rifle. A central element in your story is the ballistics demonstrations.
Yes.
So this is a pretty accurate representation of what would happen to a human being.
Yeah, this is currently considered the kind of the state of the art.
And we see this amazing slow motion footage comparing rounds from a 9mm handgun and an AR-15.
See the difference?
Yes.
Did 60 Minutes cameras shoot that footage?
Yes, we did.
I see, you can see it in there.
Why compare specifically these two rounds, the 9mm versus the AR-15?
Because the 9mm handgun is an incredibly popular weapon and is found in, across America in great numbers, and it's really the gun that kills more people than the AR-15. So it's something that emergency rooms have been seeing for years, that doctors have been looking at and dealing with for years, and they understand how that bullet operates. Conversely, the AR-15 is something most emergency rooms haven't faced yet, and it is a whole different kind of injury. When you're hit with an AR-15 bullet, most people die fairly quickly from bleeding out.
So this is really a shift in what ERs across the country have to start thinking about, right?
It is absolutely a shift. So when you see that bullet hit that gel, and you have this gaping hole, and that is what the surgeons and the doctors and the first responders are facing when they are dealing with these mass shooting victims.
This is unlike anything we've seen. What we saw amongst these children is oftentimes a very small entry wound. And you would think that with that small entry wound, we're gonna save this child. But in retrospect, when we look back at the internal damage that was done by these bullets, it was something that you would never imagine could happen from what you saw on the outside.
You also spoke to a former Green Beret, Don Deo.
Yeah.
And he has actually faced mass casualties on the battlefield, and he showed you a demonstration on a cut of pork.
And it's bone in, so it's very similar to what like the thigh of an actual average size human would be.
He really wants to show people what this would look like in flesh. And after he had shot rounds into it, a 9mm bullet and an AR-15 bullet. And at first glance, they look very similar.
These are rifle rounds. And then over here we have two 9mm entry wounds.
And what was incredible is the entry wounds are so small. You flip the piece of pork around and you see the actual wound that these two bullets created. The 9mm bullet wound, quite small, not a lot of damage there. The AR-15 bullet wound, gaping hole, shattered bone.
So under our blood pressure, our pulse rate, that whole cavity with the tissue damage will fill with blood.
So we learn in your story that the AR-15 style weapon is the most popular rifle in America. What kind of reaction are you expecting from enthusiasts of this gun after they see your story?
We're not quite sure, and it was incredibly important to me to go at this story in a way that kept it completely apolitical. We're not talking about pro-guns, we're not talking about anti-guns. It's medical. And it was through this lens that I hope, will speak to everyone across America.
Shooters don't ask which side of the debate you're on.
Not at all.
Before pulling the trigger. So regardless of your views on the AR-15, if it's your kid, if it's your loved one, you're going to want them to survive that shooting.
Right. Right. And as one of the doctors that we interviewed in our piece said so well, that's kind of where we're at right now in America. This is where they have to prepare.
What are the three things that we need for bleeding? Number one is? Okay, tourniquet, so there's 2 of them in here. What else do we need? If it's junctional gauze, that's in here as well. If it's in the chest, what do we need? It's all here. I think that what we have to do now, and this is urgent, is that we have to have the general public understand that they are the first line of defense. And every city, every community in this country needs to roll out those bleeding kits, or these active killer kits. We call them the Stop the Bleed. And every child has to learn how to do it. And just feel how it feels to try and go one more time. Right. Okay.